About all I can get out of it for one heat. I pulled up about 3/4 of an inch. Let's look at it. So the top of the vise was actually the bottom of the guard lug, and that's significant because the chisel is not, you're not just trying to eyeball where the chisel cuts, you're actually riding along the top. So the vise is your guide. It's not cutting the vise, it's not hurt it at all. I can see little shiny spots where it rubbed, but it did just the way I intended. It stayed underneath this line right there. It didn't cut out, it didn't go take a dive and go down. Top lug lifted. I'm just going to do a little dressing on the top by holding it in the vise and getting down on the top of the transition from top lug to the handle. So I'm going to put the squeeze on it and sort of roll it, hitting the sides while it's getting hot. Sort of roll it into somewhat of a radius comfortable to the hand. Shape. Okay. Something else I've done off camera was I took a tool that is just a blunt chisel, and I went in here after I cut. That left a sharp crease. That's going to be a shut of some sort that will weaken it. So I didn't want that, so I have a blunt one, and I put a little bit of a radius in there, just all the way around, hitting on it with a hammer. Pow, 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 like that. Okay, now let's talk about, and we got plenty of steel here for a blade that could be anywhere from 8 to 10 inches. I don't know yet. But remember where this is. I could cut some more up in here if I needed to, but right now I've got plenty of material here to actually draw. Remember that 45 degree? I can actually draw and grind this in, which for everybody's sake, it'd probably be easier to do. So I'm going to come up like this and blend that back there. So this webbing that's here that attaches the top to the blade is nice and long. And then this right here, this where it comes up to meet the choil, this will be the ricasso. That'll be the blade. Then the grind line can miss the guard. If you get all this too far back in relation to this, you're going to get into your guard when you grind your plunges. So there we have the rough, that's kind of roughed in. That can just go away, and so can that. And that'll have a point on it, and then blade edge and all that stuff. So this is the hard part right here. So I'll get back with you. I'm gonna get all that shaped, and then we'll take another look at it. I've got it roughed in as far as the grinding is concerned. Now you can see all I did was just took that side grinder and just dipped it in and just got rid of some of that. It doesn't take but a minute or two to do it. You got to be careful. You go too far. So what I want to tell you about is that this curve right here, act like that's not there. Just bring that curve down like that. just a smooth curve. Because when this is all said and done back here and it come around, it'll sort of almost parallel this curve here with a little flip for your finger guard. So at this point, it's time to forge the blade. So let's get that forged. I mean, you can see this is where most of the work so far has been done, right here. And I've left this intentionally alone. I've left this intentionally alone. That's going to come out quite a bit. And if I had done it early on, it would be in the way. It would just be awkward, make things very awkward. So since the majority of the work is right here, I want to do that work, and then I'll worry about this. Most bladesmiths can forge a blade. But this part right here is the most difficult part. You want to do that as early in the process as possible. That way, any risk of any kind is done and over with by the time you work out here and here. So let me forge this blade and I'll get back with you. Here working on this big X-ray. A couple things I want to share with you about it, and this is going to be some of the stuff that you're going to really need to pay close attention to. Now, whenever you last saw this, it was just a bar. This was a bar, square, and it was just a volume of material. Well, I forged that out into a blade, and I refined all this into roughly the shape that I think I need. And I say roughly because there's some amount of adjustability that you have to allow for. So the length of this right here from the top to this shoulder right there, it needs to be within some kind of parameter so that at the point where you bring the tail around and put it over the tenon, the mortise over the tenon, and you peen all that, there's going to be some compression or upsetting right here on this standoff. So you have to allow for that. That's your adjustability. And also the curve of that tail when it comes under and swings by, and of course it's going to kind of mimic this curve right here. It's going to swing up just a little bit right here. So that's your target over here, just a little bit away from the standoff. I'm talking about like a ½ inch maybe from the standoff, or a ¼ inch. That's your the part that makes the knife handle feel too big or too small or just right. So remember that. You have to allow for that. You don't measure your final measurement from here to there at this point. You get it close. It's still too big, but I'm talking about only a little bit. Right now, that's probably, let me measure that, roughly 1 3/8 inches. And I want it to settle in around 1 3/16 inches. Or 1 1/8 inches. But remember, it's going to swing up just a tiny bit. So I won't have to compress that or upset that very much. And this tenon is plenty long. Plenty. Also, the position of the top guard and this are about right, because see, when the plunge comes up, it'll miss the guard, but also we have to swing down to get we want this and the bottom, the finger guard to be sort of on a slight angle. It's not a 45, because remember this comes forward a little bit past, but it can lean forward a little bit, and that's what I kind of like. The blade turned out 10 inches long. It's probably a 1/4 inch thick. It'll be a Bowie shape, the clip. I went ahead and forged all that in. I even put my stamp on it. I kept my stamp back so that the plunge won't get into my stamp. You know, the simple things like that you can easily forget about. So from here forward, it's done for this important stage. But the adjustability on this knife, the majority of it is right here and here. And remember, it was a clean slate. It was just a bar back here that was separated and isolated from the top. The top was just widened and this was thinned, and it was back here, if you remember on another video. And you have that choice of either cutting it in or forging it in with round bars and drawing it out. I recommend you making it easy on yourself. I've gone both ways and can do it. But that's your adjustability. Okay, the next step is to bring this on out and widen it. I want that to end up at least 12 and a half inches, in which this is a 12-inch ruler, and it's got way plenty, and it's about a 1/4 inch thick, which is way more thickness than you need or should have, because that'll put too much weight in the handle. So I'll tell you what I'm planning on doing. Between now and the next video, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna heat this up and I'm gonna widen it all. I'm just gonna make a wide bar that we can then in turn draw the sculpted shape of the handle, the butt cap, and the part that goes down here, the underneath part of the handle. I'm just gonna widen it out and we'll draw it with soapstone and we'll be able to see it, and we'll grind that out and we'll proceed from there. I want to point out that I have to keep certain things in my mind. That about 80%, I'm gonna say, I don't know, I'm guessing, of the strength of the handle is in this upper part, and the rest of it that folds under is just supporting. It's a brace that supports the end of it to prevent either vibration or any flex or any perceptible movement of the handle in relation to the blade. It doesn't take much to support that. That's very strong. That's a lot of material. But you can kind of see from this angle, you can kind of see the tie-in or the transition from this horizontal this way to vertical of the blade and the ricasso. So there's probably, I don't know, at least 2 inches to tie that together, and it sort of ramps back into the handle, which again imparts strength to this part. So any torquing or any possibility of some kind of catastrophic failure is not likely. No more than on a conventional knife, and that's really my goal. And that's what I want to emphasize. We can make this strong as a crowbar, but it's not a crowbar. It's a knife, and it needs to be work sufficiently, and the handle needs to be sufficient for the blade and its use during its use. So those are guidelines that anybody should be able to use and understand. So let me get the fire hot again, and we're going to widen this band, and we'll discuss the locations of where all these parts are going to be, and also where the hole is going to be. Okay, I'll get right back with you. Okay, I've got you up here real close because I want you to be able to see what I got here. And I also have some guineas and roosters and some ducks around here too somewhere. So there'll be some noise here and there. But I got these 4 marks made, and that symbolizes the butt cap. As you see, I widened the bar, and I only widened it out to about here. I'll come back. This is the part that folds under, and the fold, of course, is at the bottom of the butt cap. This is the bottom of the butt cap. That's the top. The first fold will be here. The second fold will be here. If you reverse the order of that, you're gonna have a lot of trouble. So don't do that. Do this one first. But what I'm gonna do is pretty quickly. I'm gonna blend, or by grinding if I need to. And incidentally, I didn't say this before, but I've forged all this in before. This is actually the first time I've done it quite this way, and I did it so you would know and benefit from this simple way of outlining the sculpting of the handle. All of it, even this, the butt cap, and the part that goes underneath. And this is just way extra. That's not the hole. The hole will be somewhere down in this area. I'm not gonna put any marks on it right now. I'll just trim that off and get rid of that part that's sticking out. I know that's that much too long. And I'll probably trim it again. So that's how sure I am that I can get rid of that. So by measuring your other knives from the top guard lug, let's see, I got that backwards, and knowing what handle length you like on top, I like mine to be 5, and I go at least 5. I go about 5 1/4, and because I can fudge a little bit here and this with this shape, but not much. You don't want it to be too short, but you certainly don't want it to be way long, and it's going to be out of proportion to the blade. So I'm going to notch these 4 places and get rid of that right there, and then we'll kind of look at it again. I'm gonna flare that. You see these arrows? I'm gonna widen it. Once I know my boundaries here, these are sacred. I can still widen that. I can actually do some shaping on this butt cap, but just stay off these notches. The reason why I'm putting notches in here is so I can easily see where these bends are going to be, but that weakens it. It helps me to bend it sharply. If I left it full width and bend it, it'd be difficult. It won't be a sharp bend. It'll be a rounded bend, and that's kind of hard to do. So I'm doing all that in the vise. So I'm weakening it. And I'm not putting a cut across it to weaken it. I'm putting these notches on the side to weaken it. And then it's like any other type, when you're any other technique of cutting flat material out, and you notch it, and when it comes around, it kind of meets back up. So that's the reason why I'm notching it. Okay, let me get back with you. Okay, I went ahead and cut the notches in, and I even forged some bevels here, 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 and here, and flared some little thin areas on the sides. I'm going to roll them down. That's going to just make that handle feel more like it ought to, with a radius on top, so, and bottom. So it's going to feel a little bit better, a little bit more usable and comfortable. But I've got the notches in place. So now I'm about to show you how to judge where the hole needs to be punched. So let me get set up. All right, we're going to see if this works. I've got me just a piece of baling wire with a loop on the end of it, and I'm hooking it right there, and it's as far back, and I kind of keep a tug on it. So that is this is going to be my my template, as it were, or my little mechanism for finding where the hole goes. So remember me saying how that this bend right here is first, this one's second? Well, I'm actually doing that same thing with the wire. So I'm trying to put a fairly sharp bend in it, 90 is good enough for the time being. And again, I'm keeping all the slack pulled out right here because that's going to be my measuring place. And this one I can actually just kind of duck under here and use that as a bending. And this will end up, as far as the butt cap, will be curved. And that's a means of adjustability, that curve. Curve anywhere is a means of adjustability. So let's bring that down. You can kind of see where my plan is going here. So once I get all these curves sort of where I want them, and this will drop a little. There's some adjustability in the whole business. But I'm also kind of using my 4 fingers as a guide. Make sure that I can get my hand in there. So I'm gonna go around that rivet with that wire. And then just sort of play with the curves of the wire. Now you can see where we are here, and my hand will work just fine. And this wire will eventually kind of mimic the curve in the choil area. And the width of all this is kind of adjustable. You can see where it's all moving and adjusting. And I'm just doing that right now with the wire. Another thing that you might want to keep in mind is that your hand is not always square on a knife. It's not 90 degrees. It's usually a little bit slanted. That's more the way your hand's made and used, position on a blade. So if you're wondering about any of these, you're thinking they're too long, you better just consider what I'm saying. It'd be best that you did. Okay, now watch what I'm doing here. I'm gonna pop that off and straighten all that out. And then come back here, and where that loop is, I don't know if you can see that. Let me see if I can position you to make sure that you can see that. But where that loop is exactly where I need to punch the hole. So that's where I mark it. And I even go a step further, and I take a center punch, and I punch top and bottom because it requires knowing where you're going to use your punch, top and bottom, your hole punch. Now let's look at that. I'll just leave you in that position. That's where that loop came. Let me flip that over. That's where that loop told me where the hole needs to be. Okay. And remember, part of that's going to, about the middle of your index finger is about where that hole will be, and it curves on around like that. Okay, so there we are, and I'm going to get that hot and punch a hole. And the hole that I'm punching is a square hole. I've got a square punch, and I just want it to be big enough to where it slip on there, and then this will peen and fill up that hole. And I start my punch from this side, I finish it from this side, so there'll be a countersink on this side, because when it comes down, it'll be on the outside. This will be the outside. Okay.